Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, you're going to want to listen to this podcast because I am so excited. I'm about ready to jump off of my chair here. Are you a history buff? Are you interested in World War II? And even if you're not, you need to listen to this podcast. I really love this book, and I love the documentary. And I'm going to tell you about my guest, who did a phenomenal job of writing writing the documentary, but filming the documentary. It's incredible. My guest today is Doug Stapleton, who is a best-selling author. He's a veteran filmmaker. He's a producer. He's a director. He has a company, Iron Mike Entertainment, and he produced and he did a documentary for Mother of Normandy, the story of Simone Renaud. She was the wife's mayor in this town in France. My French is not great, but I will try. Saint Mayor Église. I hope that's right, Doug. But I want to welcome, that's right. And also, thank you. Doug was publisher and writer of this book, Mother of Normandy, which was written by Jeff Stouffer. Folks, you have to get this book. You've got to get the documentary because it's heartwarming. It's heart-touching to know what this woman did for American soldiers, how she was grateful. We're going to talk about that. That's why Doug is on. So I want to welcome Doug Stapleton back to Chatting with Betsy. Welcome,
hey,
Doug.
Betsy. Yeah, it's great to be back on your show. I was back, I think I was with you back in December of last year on my wonderful time book, and I really do appreciate you letting me come back on to talk about the Mother Normandy film and book.
Oh, my pleasure. I have to say this, Doug, before I forget. Yeah. My husband, Matt, would have loved the book, and he would have loved the film because he was a World War II history fanatic. Yeah. And I remember him watching The Longest Day. I remember my dad watching The Longest Day, which one of the characters in the book, well, not a character, the person, John Steele, who parachuted down, was caught on the church steeple.
That's correct, yes. The town that my film is about, when you did pronounce it right, Cemeteries, was the first town liberated by the Americans in the Normandy invasion/liberation, and it's very famous because of that movie, The Longest Day, and in the movie Red Buttons, the actor portrayed Private John Steele, who jumped out of the airplane and his parachute got caught on the church steeple. So today they still have a paratrooper hanging there from the steeple in honor of the guy. So, and also I wanted to clarify, regarding the book, I am not the writer of the book. My buddy Jeff Stouffer is the writer of it and did an excellent job. I am the editor and the publisher of the book, but I wanted to give credit where credit is due. Jeff is the writer of it.
Thank you. Thank you. I said writer by accident. You're the editor and publisher. Okay.
Yeah.
I had to ask you, Doug, how did you come about making this wonderful documentary about this wonderful woman who was so ahead of her time?
Well, I like you and your husband, am a big history buff, and I love World War II history. And so I went over to Normandy for the first time. I always wanted to go over to Normandy, so I went over the first time in I think 1998, but it was during the winter, so not a good time to go because all the museums were closed and it was kind of gloomy. But I did get a chance to go and see the beaches. But then I learned, did a little more research and realized you need to go. When you're going to go there during the summer or the fall when the weather's a lot better and all the museums are open. So I ended up going the next year during June, during the actual week of the D-Day anniversary, which is June 1st through the 7th or 8th. June 6th is the actual D-Day anniversary day, and that was the trip of a lifetime because I got to see everything and meet a lot of neat people, and so that's kind of how it started. And then on one of my trips on the 59th anniversary, I ran into some British World War II veterans, became friends with them and heard about their stories, so I decided to do a documentary on them. And during the 60th anniversary, when I was doing that on them, my main cameraman was coming across the ferry with them on the boat, and me and my other cameraman and audio guy, we got there a day before. So we went down to St. Mary Glees because I knew that's where the Americans had landed on the beach at Utah Beach, and the paratroopers had come in there. And so I thought, well, even though my documentary was about the British, during the Normandy invasion, I thought it would be great to get the perspective of the Americans and why they come back every year for the anniversary. So in doing that, went to St. Mary Glees, and I ran into a guy from Holland who saw my camera stuff, and he had an old 1940s Willys Jeep, 1944 Willys Jeep, and I told him what I was doing. He said, "Oh, you need to talk to Bill Tucker." I said, "Who's that?" He said, "Oh, he's an 82nd Airborne paratrooper. He landed here on D-Day." And I said, "Oh, wow, that'd be cool." And he said, "Yeah, he's sitting right over there." And he was sitting at a table. So I went over to introduce myself, and I told him what I was doing. I said, "Man, I'd love to interview you if it's possible." And he said, "Yeah, that would be possible, but tomorrow would be better. I have I'm freer tomorrow." So I ended up meeting Bill, and we interviewed him, and we went over to the museum. And while I was at the museum, he was about 79 or 80 at the time, okay? So, there was a gentleman that walked by, and he said, "Hey, Bill, what's up with the camera equipment?" And Bill said, "Oh, these guys are from Los Angeles, and they're doing a documentary on some British veterans, and they wanted to interview me because I'm an American, American veteran." And so the guy just sits down, puts his arm around Bill, and says, looks right in the camera. And we had the camera rolling. He said, "Let me tell you something. We French, we love the Americans, and we love what they've done for our country. We love that they liberated us during the war, and they're always welcome back to France, to Normandy, and especially St. Mary Glees, the first town liberated by the Americans." And I thought, wow, that was said very well. I said, "Now who are you?" And Bill says, "Oh, this is Maurice Renaud. His father was the mayor during the D-Day, during the D-Day invasion." And so I started talking to him. I said, "Wow!" And he showed me a book he had that his dad wrote back in 1945. It was a bestseller for 2 years, and it was all about firsthand experience of being the mayor of the town during the invasion. And he so that's how it started. And there's more to it, but that's how I met. That's how I found out about his dad, and then I met his brother Henri Jean. He took me back to his house, and that's where I found out about his mother and what she did. And so I'll leave it at that, and we can go into it more, but that's kind of how I learned about the story.
How long did it take you to make this documentary?
Well, I started it in 2005, and it took me about 5 years. I started in 2005. Maurice said yes. I asked him. I said, "I'd like to do a documentary on your mother and father," and he said yes. And so he said, out of the 4 guys that I said, "Well, who were the closest veterans to your mom?" He said, "Well, they knew so many veterans. They were close to so many of them." He said, "But there was 4 that they were extremely close with, that they did a lot of things with for the anniversaries, and it was Bill Tucker, Bob Piper, and Bob Murphy, and Don Lassen. They were all 82nd Airborne paratroopers, and they also knew 101st Airborne paratroopers, but it happened to be these 4 were the closest ones, and 2 of them, he said, have cancer." He said, "So you need to move quick." He said, "Because we don't know how long they're going to be around." So within a couple months, I interviewed all 4 of those guys and got them on tape, and then I started the project. But I was going to Wilmington. I was going up to Cape Cod. I was going back and forth to France, and it was about a 5-year project. But I got it done in 2010. And it's a history project, so it really doesn't get old. I mean, it does get old every year. Another year goes by, but it's got great shelf life because it's a true story and it's based on history, and so it really doesn't get old. And there's so many people that don't know about it, so that's why I always, when I have an opportunity to talk about it, I love to tell people, because once they hear about it, they either want to see the movie or buy the book or both.
Yes, it is so heartwarming and touching to know what Simone Renaud did for the Americans and their town. I mean, I want to put it in perspective for the audience, because we don't hear about World War II, and there's not many World War II veterans left. They're in their late 90s, if they're alive. I know my dad would have been 98 if he was alive. So they are dying. We need to honor them. We need to remember the sacrifices that they made. And I'm going to get a little political here. I don't care who I offend. I really don't. Yeah. You know, people whine, it's against my rights to wear a mask. Let me tell you something. You only were asked to wear a mask. These men, these brave men, wore 80 pounds to 100 pounds of equipment, dropped out of an airplane, and were shot at. These people landed on the beaches of Normandy and were shot at like sitting ducks. Yeah. That's putting it in perspective, folks. Yeah. Can't help it. I had to say that. These brave men and women, this is why they are the greatest generation. And I'm so grateful, Doug, that you are telling their story because it needs to be told. I love the stained glass window in the church, the town, which shows us gorgeous, the parachuters and paratroopers, and what an honor.
Well, I can tell you a little interesting story about that stained glass window.
Sure.
So Maurice Renaud was the one that I had originally met. He was only 2 years old. He was born in 42, so in 44 he was only 2. His brother Henri Jean was born in 34, so he was 10 years old on the night of the D-Day invasion. And then the oldest brother, there was 3 brothers. The oldest brother's name was Paul, and he was 16 years old. Now he died about 5 years ago, but Paul, at 16 years old, is the one that drew that stained glass window with the paratroopers in there, and they put it in the church, and it's still there today. And it's an amazing, for a 16-year-old that he drew that young, and it's in the church still today. That's pretty cool.
It's beautiful, and I want to tell
the.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you have to remember too. We don't think about this, but Paul is a young French boy at 16 years old. And they're waiting, they were under the Nazis for 4 years. They invaded France in 1940. And so from, 12 to 16, he knows what it's like to be under the Nazis. And the American paratroopers and these soldiers that came and liberated him were like, superheroes to these guys. He said they were like comic book heroes to us. And Paul is at 16, so some of these guys, were 18 years old. They were only 2 years older, jumping out of planes to liberate people they didn't even know. And so these young French boys, they just looked up to these American soldiers so much. They just loved them. And that's kind of neat. So they've honored them, kept the legacy of their mother and father after they, I think Mayor Renaud died in 1969 and Madame Renaud died in 1988, and the 3 brothers have continued honoring the vets every year as they come to Normandy, for the D-Day celebration. So that's a neat information. That is so cool. And I wrote down my notes that Mayor Alexander Renaud was a World War I veteran and a prisoner. He ran a pharmacy. So he had war, experience. He knew what it was like. Yes. And, I want to put it in perspective for the young people out there. Can you imagine being in your town and you hear gunshots? There's a war going on, kind of like what you see in the Ukraine, but you're having people parachuting down. They're fighting right in front of you, dying in front of you. Can't help but get graphic because I really want to tell people 15,000 soldiers died. Is that correct? Yeah, that's not all in one night, but as the Normandy campaign lasted about 3 months. Yeah, it was a lot of deaths. From the night of the paratroopers jumping and the guys landing on Utah Beach, and then the days of battles after that. But really interesting that you brought up Mayor Renaud. Is he was a World War I veteran, and interesting. The World War I started in 1914. Well, he did his 2 years of military service starting in 1912. So right when he was getting out doing his military service, World War I started, so he had to stay in the war or stay in the military, and he did another 3.5 years. In the last 6 months of the war, he got captured by the Germans, and he actually spoke German, so he was in a prisoner of war camp for the last 6 months. And so it's very interesting. So after the war was done and then World War II started, he knew what combat was. He was actually in a machine gun platoon. So there was out of the 40 guys that left from his area, only 4 came back. He was one of them after the war. But he was a seasoned World War I veteran, so he was used to dealing with the Germans, and he was like the perfect guy to be the mayor of the town during the invasion because he knew how to negotiate with them and get things done. And that's pretty neat, pretty neat little piece of history, I think.
Yes, it is. And I have to tell the audience that Simone Renaud, who was the mayor's wife, and I say she was way ahead of her time because to me she seemed like she's a very kind, compassionate, but strong-willed woman who spoke her mind.
Yes,
she wasn't afraid to speak up.
No. And
I just love that. And what she did, to put flowers on the graves, to take care of the graves that were there, it's phenomenal. And her picture was taken in 1944. She was putting flowers on Teddy Roosevelt Jr.'s grave.
Yeah.
And it was in Life magazine, and that's how she got noticed, isn't it, Doug, of what she was doing?
That's great that you brought that up because when I did, right after I met Maurice and he said, my brother, I asked him, what do you remember from the war, the night of the invasion? He goes, I was only 2 years old. I don't remember anything. I learned it from my brothers as I grew up. He said, I remember when I was, 5 and 6 and 7, I remember the American soldiers were at our house drinking wine and having food and stuff, But he said, my brother Henri Jean, he remembers everything. He was 10 years old. He's standing right behind you. And he happened to be standing right behind me at the museum. So I met him, and that's when I said, could I interview you also? And he said yes. And he mentioned, I interviewed him over by the pharmacy because his dad was the pharmacist, and I had asked him what he remembered, and he told me, and then he started talking to me, all the letters. He said, my mother and father were just so dedicated to the American veterans, and he was just talking about that. Then he said, all the letters I could show you. And I said, letters? What letters? And he said, well, could you come to my house? And I said, sure. So he took me to his house, and that's when I discovered the story. I still hadn't even known what they had done yet, what his mother had done. And when he brought me in his den and he showed me this, this big picture, 3-ring binder book of photographs and stuff with Bill Tucker and their families starting back from the 50s and how their kids and their grandkids traveled back and forth to France and spent summers together. And I said, wow, you guys have had an amazing relationship with Bill. He said, oh, yeah, we've known – our families have known each other for 60 years, and we've continued to keep this connection between the French and the Americans going. And then when I said, well, out of all the stuff in your office here, what's the most important? And there was these 10 3-ring binder books. They had all little American flags on the top of all of them, and he picked the second one out. And that's when he started going through the pages, and that's where I started seeing all these letters and little pictures of GIs. And I could see in the corner maybe say Seattle, Washington, 1946, 1945, Pennsylvania. And I said, what are these from? He said, oh, these are letters that were sent to my father and then eventually to my mother. And then I said, and then there was a picture of a lady putting flowers on the grave. And I said, who's the lady putting flowers on the grave? He goes, oh, that's my mom. I said, oh, what is she doing that for? And he goes, well, that's what my mother did. And then I said, what do you mean? So then he told me the story. But that was the picture of her putting flowers on Teddy Roosevelt Jr.'s grave. It was in a Life magazine. It came out August 7th, 1944. And he had explained, what happened, that Teddy Roosevelt landed on Utah Beach. He was the son of, President Theodore Roosevelt from, 1905 or 1907 during his presidency. And he was a brigadier general. 6 weeks later, he had a heart attack, and they buried him in temporary cemetery number 2 in St. Mary-Glise. And that's how I found out about him being buried there and found out about what his mother and father had done. And that's when I said, wow, who knows about this story? And he said, well, not a lot of people. And that's when I said, man, we got to make this into a movie. This is an amazing human interest story. So that's kind of how that happened. And that's the connection with Teddy Roosevelt Jr. In St. Mary-Glise and that Life magazine photo.
That is amazing. And then so after that picture was taken and people back in the States saw it, they were sending letters to Simone Renaud saying, can, tell me about where my husband is, or
yes,
my son, can you put flowers? And I want to tell the young people out there, there wasn't any computers. This woman hand wrote, or she typed for 8 to 10 hours a day. She wrote letters. And this is by mail. So it's no email, okay, not
exactly.
instantaneous.
It's not instant, no email, and it had to come over by a ship or a plane, And sometimes these things were 2 or 3 weeks late, I mean, again, it just, it was a whole different time. And you're right, she did. What happened is at first, once the War Department would send home these Western Union telegrams to the families, basically saying the same thing, where if their family member had died, we're unfortunately sad news to tell you your son's been killed in the war, or your husband or whatever, and he's buried in St. Mary Glees in the cemetery, temporary cemetery there. So what happened is people just started sending letters to the mayor, of the Tension mayor, St. Mary Glees, not even knowing his last name or his name, and then he got those letters and he said to Madame Renaud, they had 3 sons themselves, younger sons, and they said, we have to help these people. They need us. We're here. They're there, and their sons died. So she says, I'll take care of it. So she said, give me the letters. And so she went and found the graves. And at the beginning, sometimes they just had dog tags on the graves before they put, the across the cross or on the Star of David what their name was. And so she did it herself, and then she'd find the grave and take a picture, put flowers. Sometimes she'd take some rose petals from the flowers or some dirt from the grave, something tangible, and she put it in the envelope, and she wrote a letter of comfort back to the family. And they got this, and it's like, wow, this lady's taking care of, John's grave or whatever his name was, and that meant such comfort to them, and then they wrote a letter back to her thanking her, and that's how this information this relationship started happening on a small level. And then when the Life magazine came out, sure enough, it had a picture of her putting flowers on Teddy Roosevelt Jr.'s grave, and on the bottom it said, "This is Madame Simone Renaud, wife of the mayor of St. Mary Glees, and she's keeping General Teddy Roosevelt Jr.'s grave decked with flowers." And so now you take that times hundreds of people saying, oh, my gosh, that's where Daddy's buried, or that's where our brother's buried, St. Mary Glees. This is the lady that does it. So then she started getting letters directly, attention, Madame Simone Renaud. And that's how it started. She dedicated the last 40 years of her life, 40 years of her life till she died in 88, keeping those relationships going.
Yes, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I read that she wrote letters until her last 2 years of life, and then her sons took over. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's true.
Incredible.
She couldn't write anymore, so she would dictate. She had Henri Jean sit at her bed, and she would say stuff. All right, like write one to Mrs. Monroe in Tucson, and and then she would say it, and he would write it down and send it off. So yeah. That's pretty amazing. She's very dedicated. And also, a lot of people don't know that the 3 temporary cemeteries, they put them in St. Mary Glees, and they were temporary. So they were there from 1944 to 1948. And then the war ended in 45. So in 48, the War Department / government decided to exhume the bodies, and they gave the families in America a choice that their loved one's body could be exhumed and brought back to America and be buried in American soil, either in their hometown or Arlington or wherever they could be buried, or they could stay in French soil, but they were going to be moved about 30 kilometers or about 30, 40 miles south of St. Mary Glees in a cemetery called Colville, which is right above Omaha Beach. Right now it's called the Colville American Cemetery. So a lot of families decided that they'd rather have them stay in French soil. So about 60% of the bodies were brought back to America, and 40% stayed in French soil, but were buried down in Colville. And there's about 9,300 soldiers, not all from St. Mary Glees, but about 9,300 in that cemetery. And a lot of them, were buried. They died on Omaha Beach, so they were buried in that cemetery because it was so close. So that's kind of some history there also. And she was just another thing is Madame Renaud and the mayor were very, very mad with the U.S. government. They wrote letters and letters, and they had the generals saying, "Please don't take these cemeteries from our town. We want to honor the dead." And they said no, they have to be moved. And they said, "Well, just leave one cemetery. You could take 2, but leave 1." They said no, and then they said just leave one body, one soldier that we can honor. And the government said no. So then, after that happened in 48, she started going down to, she didn't have a driver's license, so she had to have people drive her, but she would go down to Colville, and she would see the same, visit the same soldiers' graves that she had been visiting, and probably even new ones as more people, knew about her. So it's amazing story.
Yes, she was an amazing woman of great strength and integrity. I can't even talk.
Yeah.
And compassion. To be writing these letters for 44 years. I mean, that's just it's beyond words. It really is wonderful. It shows the dedication and the appreciation that Simone Renaud and her family had for the Americans. And it's just, I think it's just beautiful. I also wanted to ask you, because in the documentary, there's the voice, Leslie Caron, if I'm saying her name right.
Caron. Yeah, Leslie Caron. Yes.
Caron. Yes, it was a famous French-American actress. Yes. How did you get her to do that?
That's a great story. Yeah, that's a great story, and I'm happy to tell the story because it's pretty neat how it happened. So my friend Kathy Soroff, who's from Locust Valley, Long Island, which is, she's the co-president of Operation Democracy, which is the sister city program that we mention about in the film. Well, Kathy, she started coming to Normandy in 2006 as a result of me visiting. I had done business with her husband, Douglas. He's a songwriter, and so they invited me to come out there, and during that trip is when I first met her. And I was working on the film, and she loved what the story was. So I said, why don't you come to Normandy? I'm going to be going next year. And so she came, and so she's been going every year since. And so she said, Doug, we got to get Leslie Caron to be the voice of Madame Renaud for the movie. And I said, that's an awesome idea, because I knew who Leslie Caron was, and I'm a big movie buff myself, and I knew that she had done was signed with MGM back in the 50s and had done American in Paris with Gene Kelly, and Daddy Longlegs with Fred Astaire, and was it Father Goose with Cary Grant? She did some big movies. Oh, and also Gigi, which is one of her famous movies. Anyway, so I said, Kathy, that's an awesome idea. I said, but I do not know Leslie Caron. And I said, but I love that. And she said, well, you know what? I heard that she has a little B&B kind of breakfast thing about an hour outside of Paris. So we were at the Cannes Film Festival. This was in 2008 or 9. And she said, before I come to Normandy, because there was about 2 weeks in between, she said, I'll meet you guys in Normandy. I'm going to go up to Paris, and I'm going to see if I can find her. So I gave her a little packet, an informational packet on Mother Normandy with a little trailer of the DVD and stuff. And so she went there, and she went to her hotel / B&B, and unfortunately Leslie was traveling, but she left a letter with the package. And when she came to Normandy, I said, hey, what's the scoop? And she goes, well, she was traveling, but I left it for her. I said, okay, well, we'll see what happens. If it's meant to be, it'll happen. If not, no problem. So 4 months later, we had gotten back to the States, and 4 months later, Kathy called me, and she said, Doug, I have some exciting news. What? I said, what? She said, Leslie Caron called me. I said, really? She goes, yeah. She was very apologetic. She'd been traveling, but she read the information about your movie, and she said she wants to do the movie, and she wants to talk to you. And I said, awesome. So she gave me her phone number. I sent an email to Leslie, and we scheduled the time for us to talk, and we talked, so I flew out to Paris, and I had dinner with Leslie and Maurice Renaud, Madame Renaud's youngest son, who I originally met and was kind of my point guy for the film. He lived in Paris at the time, so I went and stayed at Maurice's apartment, which is actually Madame Renaud's old apartment. She said that her and the mayor had that apartment like from 1950 for many years. Anyway, so Leslie Caron and I and Maurice are having dinner in this little French restaurant, her favorite restaurant. And so I'm sitting across from Leslie, and I said, Leslie, I want to just let you know that I'm just so honored that you would be the voice of my documentary of Madame Renaud. And I said, I just have a question for you. I said, I know your background. You're a very famous, movie star and Golden Globe and Academy Award nominations and stuff. And I said, you've done big movies and Cary Grant with all these people. I said, my movie's just a little movie. I said, I'm just curious, why are you doing it? And she looked at me and she kind of laughed, and she says, well, I don't know if you know my background. She said, my mother was American and my father was French. And she said, so I have a connection to America through my mother. And she said, and I was a young, teenage girl from, I think she said from 9 to 13 years old. She said, I grew up under the Nazis. I remember when they invaded France, and I knew our lives changed when they invaded and occupied. And she said, so when I read what Madame Renaud did for all the soldiers that came in at Normandy, she said, we also had apart from living in France, apart from living in Paris, we also had a home in the south of France. And she said, in August of 1944, she said, I was there when the Americans liberated southern France. And she said, I was one of the teenagers holding a white handkerchief, waving, thanking them for our liberation. She goes, so I had to do this movie. I lived it. And I'm thankful for what Madame Renaud did. So I was blown away when she told me that. I had no idea that she had this connection to America and loved the soldiers and just, was part of that whole thing. So that was kind of amazing.
That is really cool.
And she did it. She followed through.
Yes.
I said, well, when are you going to? I said, how can we get? I said, I said, we got to figure out how to get you in I can fly out to Paris and get you in the sound booth. And she said, well, I just came out with a new book. And I said, well, are you going to be in L.A.? She goes, yeah, I am. So I worked it out while she was on her book tour in L.A. I had dinner with her one night, and then the next day I had her in the studio for like 3 hours, and she did the American in English. She did her lines in English and in French, and she totally did it, and she did a great job. So that's kind of the story of how Leslie Crone became part of this project.
Yeah, that is really cool. And yes, she did do a wonderful job. Can you tell the audience about Operation Democracy? As you mentioned, Locust Valley was a sister town for St. Marie Église. And how did that come about? That's such a cool story, another heartwarming story.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. And now that you mentioned Operation Democracy, I believe if people want to know a little more about that, I think it's operationdemocracy.org is their website, and they have a lot of great history there. And then also the Mother of Normandy website is motherofnormandy.com, and they can learn about the movie and the film, and then I know we're going to talk about the ebook, and they can get that on Amazon because that just came out a couple of days ago. But Operation Democracy, another serendipitous thing. It's like I had no idea. So when I went to visit Kathy Soroff, her husband Douglas and I had been friends about a year, and he was a songwriter, and I was getting his songs. I was a music publisher getting songs placed in film and TV, and I was getting his songs placed in film and TV. And he said, hey, Doug, he said, do you ever come out to New York? I said, well, I come out there once in a while to Manhattan. He goes, well, whenever you come, he said, I'd love to have you come out to Long Island and stay with us for a few days. I said, awesome. So I think 2 or 3 months later, I ended up going to New York. So I called him up. I went out and stayed with him for 3 or 4 days. And one night I met Kathy, and we went and had dinner, and with a couple of their friends, and they were asking about my what my documentary is about. And when I told Kathy, she flipped out. She said, Doug, this is an amazing story. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then as we were driving home, or the next day as we were talking, I mentioned a little more about Teddy Roosevelt Jr. being buried there. And she said, Teddy Roosevelt Jr. is from this area. I said, what? She goes, yeah, Sagamore Hill. She said Oyster Bay is the town next to Locust Valley. I said, really? She goes, yeah, we can go to the museum. So we went to the museum. And so all of a sudden I found out there was a connection to Teddy Roosevelt Jr. And then so that was really cool. So when I got back from that trip, I talked to Maurice. He called me from Paris and said, hey, I just wanted to see how things were going on the movie because I was just started making the movie. And I said, well, I just got back. I said, things are going good. I said, I just got back from New York, and I was staying out on Long Island, my first time on Long Island, with some friends in this little town called Locust Valley. And all of a sudden there's just silence on the other end of the phone. He says, Locust Valley? And I go, yeah. And he goes, Locust Valley, New York, Long Island? I go, yeah. He goes, I know this town. I said, really? How do you know it? He said, after the war, he said, this town sent us all this amazing things to help us get back on our feet after the war. Medical supplies and pencils and school supplies and food and clothes. I said, really? He goes, yeah, Locust Valley, New York, Long Island. I said, well, let me talk to Kathy, see if she knows anything about that. So I called Kathy and I told her my conversation with Maurice, and she said, Doug, I don't know anything about it. And she goes, let me go to the Library and Historical Society, and I'll see what I find out. So she called me the next day, and she said, Doug, Maurice is right. She said, in 1947, this lady named Martha Breasted was having dinner with an 82nd Airborne paratrooper named Gus. I can't remember his name, but Gus. He was a vice president of Quaker Oats before the war, and then he was a lieutenant colonel in the 82nd Airborne, and he landed in the D-Day invasion. Actually, he came in. He was a paratrooper, but he came in on a glider, and so he was aware of what happened in Europe. You know, he saw it and the devastation. So, 1947 Thanksgiving dinner, they were talking about how we need to start doing something more on a smaller level apart from the Marshall Plan, with communities helping. And so that's how the idea came, and they called it Operation Democracy, and they picked St. Mary to be their sister city to help, because that's where he landed, and also that's where Teddy Roosevelt Jr. was buried in the cemetery. And so that's how that all happened. And then as a result of me doing my movie, Kathy found out about it. They did it closed like in maybe the 60s, but they rebirthed it, you know, in 2005 or 6, and that's how that all happened. I had no idea that there was that there was a sister city with of Locust Valley in my little town that my movie is about. I mean, what are the chances of that, right?
Right.
I put it in the movie. I put it in the movie. There's a whole little section about that, and it's pretty amazing.
Yes, it is such a wonderful documentary, Doug. And I know I told you before we recorded, and I was going to say this to the audience. I know. This is how strong I feel about this documentary. This should be from elementary through college in history classes. We need to learn. We need to remember the sacrifices of these young, brave men who gave their lives. I know it sounds cliche, but freedom isn't free. It comes at the price. And these young men and women paid the price. And it's just so, it's kind of mind-boggling in a way, but it's just so heart-touching. I was like, I had tears, you know, like watching this and reading, because what these men went through. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even see at night. So can you imagine dropping out of a plane, pitch dark? They didn't have night goggles back then. Okay, folks, there's no night goggles. No. And I can't read a map myself, so I would have been lost. And they just went because they served their country. Now, I have a son, and I can't picture sending my son over to help someone else gain their independence. I'm selfish that way. I wouldn't want my son to go, but these men went. These men went without question. Such dedication to the Renaud family, and keeping the story, and taking care of the graves. And Simone Renaud, she met with President Eisenhower. I mean, she met with some big
She met a lot of
people.
Big generals. They, you know, the Renaud, a little house there, which is the pharmacy is on the bottom floor, and then they lived in the 2 stories above. Well, that was kind of you know, the epicenter, that town, because it was the first town liberated by the Americans. But that was that was where everybody was coming to meet. So the generals would come there, and the regular privates. They just had them all over at the house, and they fed them, and you know, because they were still even after 45, when the war was done, they still had occupational, you know, duty for a while, and getting France back on their feet. But yes, 1945, they had the first anniversary. Madame Renaud and Mayor Renaud put it together, and then Eisenhower, he came there in 60. I think it was 60. Was it 62? With Walter Cronkite. Well, actually, it was 19. I think they shot it in 63, but it aired in 64. It was the 20th anniversary, called D-Day plus, or D-Day 20 years later, and it was. They went to all the places in Normandy, and they went to St. Mary and President Eisenhower actually sat on a bench with Madame Renaud and talked and interviewed her, and got a little piece of that in the movie, actually, in my documentary. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
You should be very proud of yourself, Doug, and because it is wonderful. I can't read my handwriting, but you had a quote that you said gratitude. I can't read is inspiration that someone paid a price.
I don't remember that quote, but if it's in the book, yeah, probably. But yeah, basically, I think it just thank you for that. I'm flattered you say that, but I'm just honored to be, I guess, the one that God chose to do this, because it could have been a lot of people, and I really did give it my all. But it's just such an honor to tell her story and to be part of it. And like I said, it's been really enriched my life. I've met so many neat veterans, and I've gotten to know the veteran community more. I mean, my dad was actually in the Navy, so I'm not a veteran myself, but I do have some military people in my family, my dad and my uncle and some cousins. But I've really got to know these guys on a very, I became friends with them and got to hear their stories, and it's just an honor to rub shoulders with guys like this and the people that I've met. I'm just sometimes I got to pinch myself that I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to just be at the right place at the right time that day to meet Bill Tucker, which led me to meeting the two Renaud boys, and then the rest is history. I did the film, and listen, it's 12 years. It came out in 2010, and we're still talking about it because, like I said, it's a history piece, so it really never gets old. It does get old every year, but it's an amazing story that we can be talking about it in 5 or 10 years because these are real people, real lives that were affected. And I know that Madame Renaud's story has inspired other people because during what happened with her, people over in Belgium started doing the same thing. I'm sorry, not Belgium, in Holland, decorating the cemeteries over there. They adopt the graves, and I know that I know in Normandy, I think it started with Madame Renaud, but I know in other countries they also did it. So I know that she's inspired a lot of people to do that, which is really neat.
Yes, and I really want to tell the audience to go on the website. Can you give the website again, Doug, where they can even see the videos of your interviews with the World War II veterans that are no longer with us, unfortunately?
Yeah.
Some of them.
Well, that was the reason I was on your show today and doing some press, because Memorial Day, was this month, May 30th at the end of the month, and then the 78th anniversary of D-Day is the first week of June, basically June 6th. So, and the new thing that I have is, the movie and book have been out since 2010, but I have a new component that I've added to the hardcover book, which is an ebook. So now it's available, on Amazon as a Kindle. Ebook where people can, read it on their computers or, Apple, Kobo, Google, Kindle Fire devices, that kind of stuff. And so if people do want to buy the ebook, and right now it's very inexpensive. It's only $6.99. The normal price will be $14.99, but we wanted to make it a discount price for until June 1st. So if you want to get it at a good discount, $6.99, you can go to Amazon and just type in Mother of Normandy, and it'll just look for the Kindle version, and so people can buy it there. And then if they wanted the DVD or the hardcover book, those are available on the Mother of Normandy website, and that website is it's just the name of the film, Mother of Normandy with a Y.com, motherofnormandy.com, and on there they can watch the film trailer, a little 6-minute trailer. They can look at the endorsements. I got a great endorsement from Susan Eisenhower, which is General Eisenhower's granddaughter, who I've met over the years, in Normandy, and Michael Reagan, President Reagan's son, who I've done some projects with, and some other endorsements. So they can kind of get a real good a good idea of what the film is about just from going to the website alone. And then there's Operation Democracy. There's actually a link to Operation Democracy on the bottom of the Mother of Normandy website. But that's kind of, where people would go. For the book or DVD, go to mothernormandy.com, and to buy the ebook, go to Amazon, and you can find it there.
Yes, and I don't remember, Doug, do you have where is it where you had the videos of the veterans that you're interviewing?
Yeah, that is. I think those are. Let me just type in. I think I have. I think I have a channel.
YouTube.
Doug Stebleton, and I just put a bunch of. Let me see. Where's it at? Yeah, I think I just put a bunch of interviews that I had done with the guys. Yeah, here's one. Bill Tucker. Yeah. So if people just go to YouTube and just type in Doug Stebleton. I have a channel there, and I'm not sure how many videos I got. Let me just see. But I put a bunch of let's see. There's probably about 50 videos of guys that were paratroopers, Air Corps pilots, guys in the Navy that I've interviewed. I just put those up there for free. That people can check those out. So, and that's Doug Stubbleton on YouTube.
Oh, thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
I could talk to you for hours on this. I could do probably a part 2. And I want to thank you for what you're doing for veterans, what you did for these World War II veterans, and for Simone Renaud and her family to remember them, give them honor. They should be honored. They should be remembered. These veterans need to be remembered. Folks, we cannot forget these veterans and what they did. And I don't care if you agree with, war or not, doesn't matter. You support the troops. You support the people who fought. And put your politics aside. We would not be speaking English right now if these men, brave men and women, didn't go over. During World War II, it just wasn't one war. It was really 2 wars in one. They were fighting over in Europe and in the Pacific. My uncle fought in Germany. My dad was in the Pacific during World War II. And it's just, I can't thank you enough, really, for coming on and honoring these veterans with this movie. Folks, you need to see this. You need to see it. You need to get the coffee book, go on the YouTube channel, and learn from these past veterans. They're probably not with us. I'm sure they're not with us anymore.
Yeah.
And you need to hear these men and what they went through. I get excited, I get in my soapbox, but I'm not going to apologize for it because I am patriotic.
Passionate about your patriotism, as we should be. These guys laid down their lives for our freedoms, and we cannot forget that. And you said, it was a world. It's called World War II. It was a world war. It was happening on, so many different continents. And these guys, as you said, they're jumping into town. The only light they had. You said they didn't have goggles. The only light they had was tracer bullets coming up at them. ACAC. Can you imagine jumping out of a plane and getting shot at? So these guys are jumping into a country that they don't really know anything about. Really, they don't know anybody there, and they're willing to give their lives for their freedom. It's just mind-boggling. We owe so much to them. Yes, indeed. And thank you, Doug. Well, thanks. Thank you, Betsy, for the opportunity to come in and talk about the film, and hopefully we can do it again sometime. Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure indeed. It's my honor. Thank you so much. Folks, please share this podcast because we need to remember Memorial Day's coming up, D-Day's coming up. That was very important in my house. I grew up with a World War II veteran. We did not forget Memorial Day or D-Day. And we still need to remember what happened. We cannot forget. And I really don't care if people get offended or not because I am patriotic and I will not apologize for it. No. I want to thank Doug Stubbleton for coming on, doing this documentary, Jeff Stouffer for writing the book. Folks, you really do need to get it. And yes, I might sound redundant. I don't care. I'm passionate about this book. I'm passionate about this documentary. It touched my heart. And I read a shirt on my Facebook page. If you want to go on my Facebook page, Betsy Wurzel, Wurzel, you'll see it on there. I also put on my LinkedIn page. I am patriotic. But I want to thank Jeannie White, who's producer of the show, and she writes the blog. Please read the blog because it will have information of where you can go on the website and on Amazon. Run to Amazon and order it, please. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And I want to thank you, the listeners, for listening, sharing. I really appreciate it. And as I always say, in a world where you could be anything, folks, please be kind and shine your light bright. Shine it bright, folks. And if people don't like it, they can put on their sunglasses. Keep being a shining light in this dark world. And this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Till I see you again, be blessed.
And happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there and people who stepped up as moms. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.